Hello. It's 1:16 a.m. I've been trying to build a bookcase. I think we could charitably describe me as about a quarter of the way through. And I also just recorded this entire video and I posted it to YouTube and then I took it down because I made some errors that were annoying me and I was going on and I was like, no, I can do this video better. So then I was just going to go to sleep, but then I was like, no, I'm energized. I got the fire because I'm mad at myself for being bad at building a bookcase. So we're gonna do it now. We're gonna do it right now. I don't care. I don't need sleep. I'm working tomorrow. That's fine. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I'll get a dunk of frappuccino. It's fine. So, take two of Alien tier ranking Bonanza. I saw Alien Romulus today, and I wanted to talk about this franchise, which is a franchise I have, some weird opinions about. So, let's get into it. One opinion I have that is not weird is Alien being an S tier film. And yes, I'm sure you already know these are the Polish posters for Alien and Aliens. I'm using those because I love them. As you can see, this one is a rib cage with eyeballs. And Alien is just, look, Ridley Scott, he's not my favorite filmmaker. He's not the most consistent filmmaker in the world, as we'll see when we get to later films in this franchise. But you cannot deny that in the 80s and the late 70s, Ridley Scott was on another level. Like, he made Alien and Blade Runner within the span of 3 years. Not just a couple of the best sci-fi movies ever made, a couple of the best movies ever made, full stop. And Alien is one of my favorite sci-fi movies ever made. It's one of my favorite horror movies ever made. Yeah, it's just one of my favorite movies. I mean, you've got such a cool cast in this with like Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton and Ian Holm. And this is a very early part for Sigourney Weaver. I know she had like a tiny little role in like Annie Hall, and maybe she did a couple other things, but this was her first major part. And what's cool about it is that, when it starts, she's like just another member of the crew. She doesn't really have any more screen time than anybody else. So, as it goes on, it is essentially a slasher film where this amazing creature created by H.R. Giger is, picking off these people one at a time. And to use a slasher film parlance, she emerges as the final girl and ends up defeating this space monster. I have nails in my pocket. I have nails in my pocket. And it's such a tense movie, such a fun movie. It's timeless. I watched it a million times. I'm gonna watch it a million more times. It's fantastic. Aliens. What a lot of people think is the best film in this franchise. I don't feel that way. I'm putting Aliens in B. And for what Aliens is, it's a really good movie. It's a really good action movie about a bunch of Marines shooting aliens with machine guns. What it is not for me is a good sequel to Alien. Because Alien, it's this like really oppressive claustrophobic horror movie. You've got this villain that seems basically invulnerable, unkillable, unstoppable. And then in this film, James Cameron's big idea was this basically, what if this ultimate killing machine had one flaw, one singular flaw, and it was getting shot in the face with bullets? It's like, wow, how creative. Hats off to you, James Cameron. So, yeah, I mean, it just basically takes the vibe of the first one and just basically does the opposite, you know? It just has aliens getting mowed down by machine guns and automated turrets and Marines in mech suits having epic fights with alien queens and shit. And for what it is, it's good. Bill Paxton is wonderful in it. Sigourney Weaver got an Oscar nomination for this, and I think it was very much justified. I even think maybe she should have won. Because, like I said, she's part of an ensemble in the first film more than being the star. So in this one, she really had to, rise to that level and command the movie, and she did like a masterful job of it. She's so great in this film. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a fun action movie, you can't do much better than Aliens. But if you're looking for a smart and effective, intense follow up to the first Alien movie, if you like the first Alien movie and want anything that was special about it to remain consistent, you're going to have to go to other films in this franchise. Like, for example, Alien 3, which I used to rank above Aliens. Now I can't quite do that. Now that a little time has gone by, I've calmed down a little bit. But Alien 3 is closer than Aliens to what I want out of an Alien film. It returns largely to the vibe of the first one. There's only one creature. It seems basically unstoppable. And instead of just having a bunch of guns that they can just mow the aliens down with, these people, are basically helpless again and have to struggle to survive. But see, the thing was, this movie was in development hell for a long time. Went through a lot of script variations because they were like, the series had basically gotten blown up, and they were like, okay, the only way this series can continue is if we get Ripley as far away from guns as possible. Because if she has a gun, as we've seen in Aliens, it's over. They don't do well against guns. So they had to come up with this whole thing where she's on an alien planet that's also like a giant prison, and all weapons are forbidden. Like, not even the guards have weapons. And they also made this decision. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but in Aliens, she'd gotten like the surrogate family with this guy Hicks, who I guess she had some epic romance with, even though I thought it was kind of underdeveloped personally, but apparently they loved each other very much. And this annoying, creepy little girl called Newt, who it's not her fault. The actress did well actually, but it's just James Cameron not great at writing dialogue or plots or anything. Like he's great at spectacle. He's a really good technical director. He's great at doing set pieces. Not a great writer, in my opinion. But on this film, on Alien 3, you do have a genuinely great director. You have David Fincher. But it's got to be said, this is Fincher's first movie. He just done like some commercials and some music videos. And so, it's a very ambitious project for a first-time filmmaker. And it didn't totally work out. But at the same time, it's hard to blame him considering the how many script rewrites it went through, how tumultuous the pre-production was, and the limitations they were dealt by what was set up in the previous film. And how do you take this character who has become so powerful and disempower her a little bit to raise the stakes again? It's like in a video game where like you get to the end of God of War 2 and you have all these god powers, and then they're like, well, you can't start God of War 3 with the god powers, so they got to find a way to take them away, and then you got to earn them again. And that's basically what they had to do for Alien 3. And mixed results, but they tried. I think they had the right idea. Just execution, a little wobbly. I do think it's an underrated movie, though. Not this one, though. Alien Resurrection is my pick for the worst film in the franchise by a good margin. And, like, on paper, this film should be pretty fun. I mean, you got Ron Perlman in there. He's always an entertaining guy. You got Brad Dourif in there doing his awesome mad scientist thing. It's great. you've got a lot of weird ideas about, because Alien 3 kind of concluded Ripley's arc in a way that I thought was very satisfying. But they wanted to make another movie, and I guess thinking at the time was, you can't make another Alien movie without Ripley, so they find a really convoluted way to bring her back, and she's really good at basketball now, I guess. And it's just a mess. And the issue, I don't think, is with the director, because it's a really good director. His name is Jean-Pierre Jeunet. He's a French guy who he started out doing this really cool, really comedy thriller called Delicatessen. And then him and his filmmaking partner, Mark Caro, also did that movie together, did a movie together called City of Lost Children, which is a really cool sci-fi fantasy movie starring Ron Perlman. So that's probably how he got this Alien job. And he's a good director. Like, after this, he went and did Amelie. He's great technically. So it's like, I think most of the issue is a tonal problem, and a lot of that comes from Joss Whedon's script. Like, I've never been a big fan of Joss Whedon as a director, as a writer, well, or as a director, but we're talking about him as a writer now. It's just all of Joss Whedon's characters, they all kind of sound the same. They're all very clever and kind of smug. And, they basically all just kind of sound like Joss Whedon, which is, like, Aaron Sorkin kind of does the same thing, where everybody sounds like Aaron Sorkin, except Aaron Sorkin is like a great writer, and Joss Whedon is just kind of an incredibly confident writer. And there's a difference, I think. But that's an aesthetic thing, If you like him, you like him. But it's not my bag, And I don't think his tone, this very kind of witty, irreverent tone, really fits this franchise. It's a very odd. It's like a round peg in a square hole. What's that phrase? You know. Um, and so I saw a quote from him once about this movie, and it was very infuriating. And I'm not going to get it word for word. This is paraphrasing, but basically, the interviewer told him, you know, Joss was like complaining about Alien Resurrection and how much it sucked, and the interviewer was like, "Oh, so did they like rewrite your whole script and everything? Did they not use your lines?" And Joss Whedon said, "No, they used all my lines. They just said them incorrectly." And it's just like, whatever you say, man. You know, you are clearly not to blame for any of this. But the movie's a mess. I digress. All right. And then we got Prometheus. And I'm going to put Prometheus here in C beneath Alien 3 for me. I don't know if that's controversial or not. But Prometheus is a film that has really high highs and really low lows. I mean, the best thing about it is that it looks gorgeous, and it has an amazing performance by Michael Fassbender playing this android, David. He's incredible, and the character is fascinating. And often the android characters are the highlight of these movies, or at least one of the highlights. But the issue with this film is it's always seemed to me like Ridley Scott, is like a really good genre filmmaker. I really feel like that's where he excels. But I think his reputation has kind of got to his head a little bit, maybe. He's kind of crawled up his own butt a little bit, and he thinks, no, I'm this Academy Award winning director who directs epics and so he was like, I'll come back. Alien seems kind of pedestrian, but I'll come back to it if I can make it about, the origin of life and how we came to be and why we are how we are, and how Jesus was a giant, bald, pale alien man, and it's just it creates more problems than it solves. It's not as interesting as it's intended to be, and it just overcomplicates things. Like, how in the first Halloween, how Michael Myers, he's just walking in a line and killing people who he comes across, and you don't know why he's doing it. He doesn't have a motive. He's just unstoppable, emotionless, moralless killing machine, right? And that's very similar to what they did in the first Alien, where this this thing doesn't need a reason to kill all these people. That's just what it does. It's a hunter. It's doing this for sport, and because it's what it was designed to do. But this film is more like, what is it, Halloween like 8, where there's all that stuff about the Thorn cult and rituals, and they defeat him by like putting stones on the ground, and it paralyzes him, and then Dr. Loomis has like the tattoo on his wrist, and he screams, and you're like, what the fuck is, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like adding all this stuff that just complicates what was like a gloriously simple concept. And that would be fine if it was worth it. If you walked away from the film and it's like, wow, they really deepened things. I'm so glad they took it in that unexpected direction. But I didn't feel that way at all. I mean, I think kind of infamously, this movie asks a lot of questions that were going to be answered down the line, but then they had to kind of change direction for Covenant because of the very mixed reaction to this film. So a lot of those questions just went unanswered, or were answered kind of unsatisfactorily, like like lightning round style in the next movie. So the effect is that it's kind of unsatisfying to watch now, knowing that a lot of this stuff is never going to be addressed in any kind of significant way. It was mysterious at the time, but now it's just kind of like, that was sort of a missed opportunity. But it has its high points. And so does Alien Covenant. And I actually like Alien Covenant a little more than Prometheus. I think the thing with Prometheus was that a lot of people got the same vibe I got off Prometheus. That Ridley Scott, thought he was too good for the franchise and wanted to make it all artsy and intellectual, and it didn't really work. Some people responded to it, but some people were just like, I don't really think this is what I want from an Alien movie. And so then he was like, okay, I know what you want. Like, we'll start it the same way. It'll be a slow build. It'll be all mysterious, and it'll be cool. And then there'll be shooting and explosions and 500 xenomorphs and the jump on the ship as it's trying to fly away, and it's pounding through the windshield, and Danny McBride is screaming, and there's explosions, fireworks. And it's just like, well, I'm not sure that's what I wanted either. It is more fun. And I do enjoy parts of this movie just because they're insane and ridiculous. David is back by Michael Fassbender's android character, but now there's another identical android named Walter, and the relationship between David and Walter is the absolute highlight of the movie for me. There's a scene, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the scene I'm talking about, if you've seen the movie, and it's a scene where David teaches Walter to play the flute. It is one of the most baffling scenes I've ever seen in a theater. I was dumbfounded. I was like, how is this happening? How is this in this movie? In a way, it was wonderful. It was so unexpected. And, the ending of the movie is just bananas, too. The image they leave you with, it's nuts. So I admire the movie for being batshit crazy. And there is some entertainment value in that. But, is it a good, satisfying movie? Not really. Would I have been happy if the franchise had continued in that direction? Not really. I mean, maybe I would have been satisfied, but I wouldn't have been thrilled about it. So it is what it is. It's a fun, weird, crazy movie. And then we got Alien Romulus. And this one is going up in A. Yep, this is my second favorite Alien movie ever made. And let's just take a moment to talk about all the things this movie did right that all of the sequels to Alien have either struggled with or ignored. Right, first of all, you got the atmosphere, which the first Alien, if you ever played the Fallout games, you know that it's the future and there's future technology, but it's the future as seen through the lens of the 1950s. And this is the future as seen through the lens of the 1980s. Like, there are a couple of really nice touches at the beginning. Like, there's this guy who's playing like a handheld video game, you know, and you think it's going to be like, oh, crazy future graphics, and it's like vectors. It's like vector tanks. It's like one vector shooting another vector with vectors. You played those games maybe, but one of them vector games. And like, oh, that's kind of neat that it's the future and we've conquered space travel, but we still got like vector games that you're playing on your Game Boy Advance. And there's like another little cutaway to it's these miners going to work, and one of them's holding a canary in like a little cage, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. That once again, it's the future. We got all this crazy technology, but we haven't come up with a better way to see if a mine is safe than a canary. And I love little details like that. It's such great world building, and this movie nails that. And this movie, I've always wanted to get kind of a broader look at this universe, and the time we spend on this planet at the beginning is exactly what I've been looking for. And I hope this series continues so that the director Fede Alvarez can show us other planets, other places in this universe, because I'm fascinated by it. And then the acting in it is really good. I mean, Kaylee Spaney, who was in Civil War earlier this year, she was great in that too. She's really killing it lately. She's going to be, I would say she's going to be a huge star, but I feel like she's already a huge star. And the guy who plays the android in this, yeah, David Johnson. I've never seen him in anything before, but he's wonderful. Like, the character has a lot of duality to it, and it's just really compelling. Once again, the android is one of the huge highlights of the movie. And I also like that it borrows from each of the films. A lot of times when you have one of these sequels that's, one of these legacy sequels, soft reboots, so like Ignore, they'll be like, okay, well, we'll really lean heavily into this movie, but we'll kind of ignore this side of the universe, because this one, maybe complicates things a little too much. I didn't like the way that one changed the lore. This movie doesn't do that. This movie references all of it. There's imagery that kind of harkens back to all the films. Like, there's a great shot that kind of mirrors that shot in Alien 3 where the xenomorph's head is like right here and Ripley's there, and they're like almost like touching noses and stuff. And the ending kind of harkens back to both the first Alien and to Prometheus in certain ways. I won't give any more details than that. And there's also kind of like a riff on like the newborn from Resurrection, which they do in a much more interesting way here. And again, I'll say no more. And there's obviously lots of DNA from the first Alien movie. I will say that my favorite use of previous lore that they might have otherwise ignored. I know that if Neil Blomkamp had made this movie, he would probably have ignored this element of it. But, Carpenter, oh, Cameron, oh, it's so late, I'm so tired. Cameron's film established that all you really need to kill a xenomorph is a big gun, right? So that dramatically lowered the stakes in the franchise for good, I think. So this film acknowledges that. They acknowledge that if you have a gun, you can kill these things pretty fast, like no problem. But they find a way to incorporate that lore back into the movie while still keeping the stakes high. It's really cool the way they do it. It's really carefully executed. And it's just so inclusive. It's like all the pieces of the lore are welcome. There's even like a very direct reference to Prometheus at one point, which made me very happy to see. There is one element of it that's a little controversial, perhaps, and I'll talk about that in spoilers. I'll talk about that afterward. But yeah, for the most part, I do think this is definitely one of the best films in the franchise. I definitely think you should go see it. If you're an Alien fan, you should have seen it already. You got to go see it as soon as you can. And I really hope this series continues. So that's going to be it for this. I am going to talk about spoilers now. So if you haven't seen the movie, leave the video, go see the movie, come back. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me. But, if you don't want spoilers, leave now. Goodbye. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ian Holm is in the movie. Is CGI Ian Holm. And usually this stuff really bothers me. And I've seen that it's bothered some people online. Like it really bothered me in Rogue One when they brought Peter Cushing back. And they even brought back Carrie Fisher for that little bit at the end. And, it even kind of bothered me a little bit in Ghostbusters Afterlife when they brought back Ivan Reitman. It's weird because, these actors wouldn't have given these performances, like if the actor was alive and you went to them and you were like, hey, you don't have to bother coming in to act on this one, we're just going to use a robot to create a performance for you, they would be like, no, that's incredibly damaging to my integrity and insulting. And you know what makes you think that you can even approximate that? My creativity, you can approximate my creativity with a computer. And the reason it didn't bother me so much in here, and let me know if you agree or you think I'm just making excuses, is that he's not playing a real person. Like when you see Peter Cushing in Rogue One, he's supposed to be Peter Cushing. He's supposed to be a flesh and blood human, the same guy you saw in the other movies. So this is an android. This is already a synthetic life form. It's not a human. And it was just, they were all created with the same face in this particular line. So I don't think anyone would be complaining if, for example, they used an animatronic to do this. But because they used CGI and they had an actor come in and approximate the voice, some people take exception to it. I think it's fine in this case because they are literally saying, this is not Ian Holm. This is not the same character. He looks like him. He sounds like him. But that's just the way this thing was programmed. So for me, in that context, I didn't have much of an issue with it. But I can understand if you did. In general, creating performances from dead actors, is it's a problematic thing. It's problematic morally, I think. But in this one specific instance, I think it's more allowable than it typically is. But let me know if you agree. And I also, I can nitpick a couple things. Like, at the end when they have the gun and they keep drawing so much attention to, oh, it's almost out of ammo. And then after a while, they were just like, well, let's stop drawing attention to that, and they can just use the gun when they need to use the gun for plot reasons, and it just seemed like it had just exactly as many bullets as they needed it to have. There wasn't really any danger there. It was weird. It was like there was the danger of it running out for like half the scene, and then afterward they were like, never mind. So that was a little strange. And I also kind of really couldn't stand it when Andy said the "get away from her, you bitch" line, just because it was so on the nose, and because it doesn't seem like something his character would say. So I wasn't a big fan of that moment. But other than that, I thought the fan service was very tasteful and very creatively done. I liked that it had a little bit of the DNA from each of the films, and I just think overall it was a really successful rejuvenation of this franchise. It's personally the Alien film that I've been waiting for my whole life, more or less, and I cannot wait to see where Fede Alvarez. Is that how you pronounce his name? Fede. I don't know how you pronounce it, but however the fuck you pronounce it, he's a brilliant director, and I can't wait to see where he takes this series next, and I hope he gets the opportunity. So that's about it. It's 1:45 a.m. I gotta work in the morning, and then I gotta finish building this bookcase. See you soon. Go see Alien Romulus. Hopefully you already have, because you just listened to the spoilers. Okay, bye.